Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished diplomats, city officials, community leaders. My name is Rabbi Abraham Cooper. I'm the Associate Dean of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, an NGO here at the United Nations. And I guess in an ultimate act of faith, the UN has designated a rabbi to run a program with a time limit. So I'm going to do my best to fulfill the UN's trust in this rabbi in any event. Just as is the Jewish way, let me just express some thanks to key people who made this exhibition possible. First of all, to the Office of UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, to our dear friend, Director General Irina Bokova, the head of UNESCO in Paris, to our honorary chair people, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Professor Elie Wiesel, former Archbishop of Canterbury Lord Carey, former Justice Minister of Canada, MP and Professor Erwin Kotler, and renowned author from Algeria, Boulamam Sansal. In addition, we would like to recognize in the UN staff Negi Nasser, Melinda McCormick, and the UN security for allowing us to keep our Sabbath on Saturday and allowing us to install the exhibition on Sunday. For our sponsors, Ambassador David Pressman from the United States, John Pachowski, Mary Kate Barry, Millie Mayers, from Canada, Katerina Ventura, Michael Bonzer, Jennifer Plank, from Israel, our main host from the beginning, Ambassador David Roet, Yotam Goren, Kenan Ben Ezra, and without whom, Meirav Turel, without whom this event never would have come off, and also to acknowledge Lily Valtachanova from UNESCO. On behalf of the Wiesenthal Center, I also want to thank Professor Robert Wistridge, the renowned professor from Hebrew University, who authored this exhibition, and to acknowledge the guidance and help of our colleagues at the Wiesenthal Center here at the UN, Mark Weitzman, Dr. Shimon Samuels in Paris, my colleague Rabbi Meir May from Los Angeles, Rabbi Stephen Berg, Sarah Kramer, Dina Goldberg, and Carrie Needle. There are ambassadors and diplomats from over 15 countries here. We cannot mention all of them, but I also will take just one more moment to acknowledge and recognize my mentor, longtime mentor and friend, Malcolm Hoenlein, who's here tonight as well. Always thank God. It is a special privilege to introduce Ambassador Ron Prosor, who's Israel's 16th permanent representative to the United Nations, a person who has made a tremendous impact in these hallowed halls and throughout the Jewish world. Ambassador Prosor.
Special thanks to Secretary Gusha from UNESCO and our friends and colleagues of the American and Canadian missions, Ambassador Samantha Power, and Ambassador Gil Rischyhynski for co-hosting this event tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening when we explore 3,500 years of Jewish history. That's just a little longer than it took to get this exhibition to open at the United Nations. You know, we the Jewish people have a long history when it comes to public speaking. We trace our tradition back to Moses, who 3,000 years ago came down from Mount Sinai and delivered the world's first presentation from a handheld tablet. Ladies and gentlemen, next month Israel will celebrate its 67th anniversary, Independence Day, commemorating to the Jewish people's return to the land of Israel after thousands of years in exile. In the land of Israel, every hill and every valley and every stream is steeped in history. When my children were younger, my wife and I would plan family trips to explore our country and our history. I explained how for thousands of years our ancestors walked the same streets that they're walking and spoke the same language that we speak today. We explored Jerusalem, where our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, traveled the city's rolling hills, where King David laid the cornerstone for his palace 3,000 years ago, and where King Solomon constructed the first temple. Together, we visited the cave of the patriarchs in Hebron, where our forefathers and foremothers are buried, and we visited Tiberias, where Jewish scholars wrote the Talmud, our Jewish law books, over 2,500 years ago. For thousands of years, the Jewish people maintained a constant presence in the land of Israel, watching empires rise and fall, and conquerors come and go, until 1948, when the modern state of Israel was reborn. Since then, we have taken a desolate land and made it flourish. We took a language on the verge of extinction and brought it back to life. And we took an ancient people and gave them refuge from the persecution that plagued them across the centuries and across the globe. President Theodore Roosevelt once said, "The more you know about your past, the better you're prepared for the future." This exhibit before you brings Jewish history into life. Together, let us explore the past and equip ourselves with the knowledge we need to build a more peaceful future. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Rabbi Cooper. Tonight's opening of the exhibit, People Book Land, is important not only because of the exhibit itself, but because of what it means to be shown here at the United Nations. On the one hand, as a panel, which I saw earlier today in this exhibit, reminds us it was a vote by the United Nations 67 years ago in 1947 that helped lead to the creation of a Jewish state. On the other hand, it was also here 40 years ago in 1975 that the United Nations General Assembly issued its infamous resolution declaring that Zionism was a form of racism. It is also important that this exhibit is here because, as many of you know, UNESCO postponed the initial showing planned for Paris in January 2014 in response to a letter submitted by 22 countries expressing concern that its display might, quote, endanger the peace process, end quote. The United States disagreed, and we joined our friends in pushing back successfully. While this exhibit focuses on the Jewish people's long-standing ties to the land, it does not deny that others also have their own history or connection with the land, nor does it in any way change the United States' deep commitment to a peace process in pursuit of a two-state solution. We believe that lasting peace can only be forged through respect and understanding, the same principles the Simon Wiesenthal Center promotes to advance human rights. We believe, as an excerpt from the Book of Proverbs in this exhibit advises us, quote, "The beginning of wisdom is get wisdom. Therefore, use all your means to acquire understanding," end quote. And we believe wisdom and understanding are lost when history is forgotten or silenced. And there is much to be learned from the wide-ranging history depicted in this exhibit. Over the past 3,500 years in the Holy Land, Jews have been kings and they have been slaves. They have built great temples and seen some of them ransacked, desecrated, and razed. They have practiced their faith vibrantly during some periods and been forced to hide that faith for fear of life and limb in others. And throughout history, Jews have lived in this land with other peoples and faiths. If there is a single unifying thread tying together the history in this exhibit, it is the profound, unassailable connection between the Jews and the Holy Land. That holds even for those periods when Jews were exiled from the land. It seems like such a simple point to make, but it is a point that must be made because, as we see in the searing panels depicting the Shoah, some have even challenged the right of Jews to exist at all, never mind to have a Jewish home in the state of Israel. As the exhibit makes clear, while the yearning for the land existed millennia before the Holocaust, its unparalleled horrors gave the quest a vital urgency. Yet, in spite of these challenges, Jews have not just endured, they have thrived, and their contributions extend far beyond the land that is now the State of Israel, as the last century's contributions alone demonstrate. From the agricultural innovations that made real deserts bloom to the high-tech innovations that are making virtual deserts bloom. Indeed, the history of the Jewish people in Israel and well beyond Israel has shaped and enriched the world that we share, and that is yet another reason that this history must be told and that this exhibit should be shown. Thank you.
Mesdames et Messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, c'est pour moi, comme l'ambassadeur du Canada auprès des Nations Unies, un immense privilège d'être ici parmi vous ce soir. Et j'aimerais commencer mes remarques avec un remerciement au Centre Simon Wiesenthal pour l'opportunité d'avoir le Canada comme un des co-patrons de cette exhibition qui sera exhibée ici aux Nations Unies. On behalf of the Government of Canada, in particular the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honourable Rob Nicholson, I would like to first and foremost take the opportunity to pay homage to the efforts of the Simon Wiesenthal Center for bringing us this exhibition. The center is well known around the world, in our judgment, for three principal reasons. One, for its untiring combating of anti-Semitism, hate, and terror wherever it is found. Secondly, for the center's contribution towards promoting human rights and human dignity. And those concepts are why such a noted Canadian as the Honourable Irwin Cotler is part of the Honorary Exhibition Committee for this exhibit. Thirdly, the Wiesenthal Center has shown enormous determination to ensure that humanity never forgets the Holocaust, and most importantly, that it absorbs its lessons. My country, Canada, stands beside you and is proud to associate with the noble mission of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. The fight against hatred must continue, unfortunately, and it needs to be vigorously pursued. And for Canada, part of that struggle is to ensure that Israel has the right to live in peace and security with its neighbors, and this has been a pillar of our foreign policy since 1948. We work, we hope, and we pray as Canadians for a fair and lasting peace for all in the Middle East in our lifetimes. And it is precisely for these reasons that Canada has co-sponsored this exhibition. We hope that all who view it here at the United Nations and elsewhere will be motivated by the spirit of respect and mutual comprehension which it inspires. Encore une fois, mes remerciements au Centre Simon Wiesenthal et à vous tous pour votre présence ici ce soir. Merci beaucoup.
As the project manager of this exhibition, permit me just a few comments before we open it officially for everyone to view it. An incident took place about 8 years ago that created the momentum about this exhibition. I was asked by a well-known imam from Sudan to meet. And of course, every secret meeting is supposed to take place at the London Hilton. It's kind of, I think, a joke. But okay, so the rabbi met this wonderful man who's authored many prayers and a real personality, had a real presence. And without going into long detail, I brought 3 gifts, 3 things to this meeting. I just want to focus on one exchange. I decided to bring to the meeting my talit and tefillin, my prayer shawl and phylacteries. When I opened up the bag and showed him the fringes and the talit and the phylacteries, he asked, "What's this for?" And I said, well, every morning except for the Sabbath, wherever I am, this is sort of like our spiritual batteries, and when we pray the morning service, this is what we wear. And the imam, wonderful man that he is, looked me straight in the eye and said, "Jews pray?" That was an important teaching moment for us, because I was in the presence of a good man, of a spiritual person, of someone who was very well educated and thought he knew a lot about Jews and Judaism from his sources, but that was the beginning of a process that brought us to where we are. In my job, working together with my colleagues, especially Rabbi Marvin Heyer, the dean and founder, my job is to deal primarily with anti-Semitism. So as you can imagine, I'm on the road a lot. And the previous speakers, thankfully, have spoken directly to the issue and to the threat. And there's no doubt that anti-Semitism is a key challenge and threat to the viability of the Jewish people throughout the world. But in my travels, I've also discovered another element besides anti-Semitism, and that is a deep sense of curiosity. Who are you, Jews? What are your values? Why are people halfway around the world so emotionally intertwined with this little piece of real estate? Teach us. Lamdenu. Teach us. And so I'm happy to announce that we have plans for this exhibition in the following arenas. Of course, we will take it to the Jewish communities around the world. We'll bring it to the campuses of North America to empower our students to deal with the threats that they have to deal with today. We'll bring them to the churches throughout the world. But I've already been to Asia, and I can tell you that this exhibition will, we hope in the next few months, open in New Delhi, in Singapore. We will bring it to Africa, because we're not only dealing with a world today that has the challenge and threat of anti-Semitism, we're also dealing with a phenomenal opportunity of creating real relationships, of exchanging views, and finding what in our particular approach to life could bind us to others who pray differently or not at all, who look differently and act differently. Finally, last Sunday night, I lived the dream. My youngest daughter, Racheli, was married just across the river in East Rutherford, New Jersey, surrounded by 600 of our closest friends and relatives, as only Jewish weddings can do. But there was a moment in the ceremony in which the groom, the Chatan, everybody was waiting to start the dancing. Everything stopped. And one of the rabbis brought some ashes and placed it right on top of his head. Those ashes, as well as the breaking of the glass that everyone knows about, are symbolic of the profound, unshakable link between the Jewish people and her land, whether they're in New Jersey, New Delhi, even in northern Israel. Our approach to history is to always look to the past, to always temper the sense of, wow, this is such a great night for us, with the broader responsibilities that never go away for people who have less, and to remember, even in the best of times, our tragedies, and to remember our victories, even in the worst of times. This little exhibition is an attempt to create the dots as a part of, I hope, a growing program that will emanate also from Israel, to simply explain to our neighbors who we are, what our values are, and perhaps that will lead to a little less hatred, more importantly, to a lot more tolerance, understanding, and mutual recognition. God bless you all for coming. The exhibition is officially open. Thank you.
So I'm standing here with Malcolm Hoenlein, Executive Vice Chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. You know him well. Malcolm, what's the significance of an exhibit that celebrates 3,500 years of the Jewish connection to the land of Israel?
that it's here in the United Nations, where we see all the attempts to deny our tie to the past, our tie to history, to deny us a past, to deny us a future. And here you see in the United Nations the facts spelled out irrefutably. I think that that's really a significant statement.
I'm hoping that people really hear and see the purpose of this exhibit and understand it. And I'm worried that some people talk about narratives, as if Jews have a story and the Palestinians have an equal story. This isn't a narrative. What this shows is the fact of Israeli and Jewish connection to the land.
When you see those who say Israel came about because of the Holocaust, even the president made that reference. When you see others who try to contain the role and importance of Israel in history of the Jewish people and of the history of the Jewish people, that this is a 3,000-year claim. We are the only people with the same language, the same history, the same religious traditions. They just found tefillin, phylacteries, exactly the same as we used from 2,000 years ago. We find so many things that tie us to that ancient land. There is no other people. The Greeks are not the same Greeks. The Romans are not the same Romans. The Jews and the Israelis, the people of Israel, are the same. And here you see the continuity of the history. Then it didn't start in 1948. It did not start in 1945. It started more than 3,000 years ago, and it goes back to Abraham, to his children, and to Moses, to the deliverance of the Jewish people, to the temples, throughout our history. And the words that next year in Jerusalem never left the lips of the Jews for all of this time. And you know the story of Napoleon, who passed by on the day of mourning of Tisha B'Av, when we mourned the destruction of the temple, and he sent his lieutenant in to find out what was going on, what's this wailing. And he came back and he said, it is the Jews and they are mourning the destruction of their temple 2,000 years ago. And he said, any people, then it was 1,900 years, that mourns for 1,900 years are destined to return.
Thank you, Malcolm.
My pleasure.
Malcolm Hoenlein. I have the enormous pleasure now of standing with the Honorable Israeli Ambassador to the United Nations, Ron Prosor. And Mr. Ambassador, I just want to ask you, you're here at this extraordinary exhibit celebrating 3,500 years of Jewish connection to the land of Israel, to Eretz Yisrael, at the United Nations. What's it mean to you that UNESCO and the United Nations is hosting this event?
Well, look at this. Here, the exhibit showing the history of the Jewish people in the United Nations is an answer to all those in the halls of the United Nations who deny our history or try to deny it every day. And for me, especially before Passover, where we tell the story of our exodus from Egypt to our children, today before Passover, we will be bringing a message to the people of the world about the connection of the land of Israel to the people of Israel, a story that we will tell not just our families, but every single person who's part of the family of nations. And I think this is an amazing symbolic act.
And I want to push you one more moment. Why is it so important that the world understands our connection to the land? You speak in the United Nations all the time. You understand those who are denying Jewish history. I want you to just speak one more moment about why you think it's so important that an exhibit like this exists and is seen by the world.
Because the connection of the people of Israel to the land of Israel, from time immemorial, really presents to the world, for all those deniers, really the essence of who we are and what we are. And I'd like to end and say that I personally and my team at the United Nations, we walk these corridors of the United Nations every day, tall and proud, knowing our history, knowing our identity, and proud of what we represent and who we represent in those family of nations. Thank you very much.
Kol Tuva Hatzlacha. Thank you very much, Ron Prosor. So after this magnificent program, I have a chance to stand with Rabbi Abe Cooper. First of all, you did a magnificent job, and it was a very lovely, moving ceremony. And I'm just wondering, you heard a number of very important people here at the UN, ambassadors, speak to the issue and to this exhibit and what you're trying to do, you were also spectacular. But I was just wondering, as you were sitting there listening to them, Abe, what were you feeling and thinking?
Look, let's understand one thing. Words have consequence and they have meaning. But as I said in my comments, after the imam said, Jews pray? You could take that one of two ways. You can just walk away and say, this is outrageous. Or you can say, now wait a second. Maybe we have to change our approach. Okay? What he really was saying is, I grew up learning whatever I learned about Jews only from my scriptures. That's, Moses was a Muslim prophet. So I think both sides take a lot for granted. We live in the internet age. You live in a time where you can get on a plane, you have an American passport still, you can go anywhere in the world. So I really do believe, as one of the people whose main responsibility is combating anti-Semitism, that we should never, never forget that the ultimate goal, we're not going to change the bigots. We want to win over the people who have the curiosity, who are sitting on the sidelines. Give you one last quick, I didn't say it tonight because it wasn't appropriate, but when I was speaking in Tokyo, after we caught a major company about to publish the Protocols of Zion, and their punishment was to listen to rabbis for 6 hours. At the end, I asked them, do you have a question? And the Asian way is usually not to, but the executive vice president stood up and said, yes, we have a question. We have a question. Okay. We now understand, thank you for coming, that Jews don't go to synagogue on the Sabbath in order to plot the economic downfall of Japan. And we understand now that you don't go to synagogue on the Sabbath to plan World War III. I said, okay, what's your question? What do Jews do in synagogue? That's the challenge. We have a tendency to play the game by the rules set by our enemies. Every time we can, we should be pivoting from the defense to the offense, because look at what we have to celebrate and bring to the world. So we need to educate our own, and then I think be fearless in just stepping out. And I spoke to a young Chinese journalist. They have a civilization 6,000 years old. We're right about there. That means we should be able to step up and have a conversation as equals. And I think it's also very important, again, coming from the guy who fights anti-Semitism every day, not to allow the anti-Semites to dictate what our priorities are. Priorities are to bring our message and our legitimacy to people who don't know anything about Jews, maybe not really interested. We need to find ways to reach them before the bad guys do.
You're doing extraordinary work for the Jewish people, the state of Israel, and for really humanity as a whole. This was a wonderful program. Mazal tov to you. Here we are at an extraordinary event from the United Nations in downtown New York City. I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.